Rain pattered on the tin roofs of small houses lined up in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio. Beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, an old rusty truck sat silently by the roadside. A cold wind blew through, carrying dry leaves that rustled across the ground. In a hidden corner under the truck, a pair of eyes glinted in the darkness. It was her. A tabby with a dirt-streaked coat, called Rusty because her fur matched the truck's rust. She didn't move, her gaze fixed on the empty road ahead. Her cry rang out, faint but desperate, blending with the sound of the rain. She wasn't hungry. She wasn't seeking shelter. She was waiting for something she had lost. This neighborhood was nothing special. Old wooden houses, bare trees in winter, and cars parked for days without being driven. But a few weeks ago, people started noticing something unusual. Under the rusty truck, a family of cats had made their home. Rusty, both tough and fragile, was always there, tending to her 5 tiny kittens. They were small, fluffy, with round eyes like gems, rolling around under the truck, playing together in the cramped space. The neighbors liked them. An old man living across the street often stood by his window, watching the kittens play, muttering, "Look at them, just like a bunch of kids." An elderly woman from the end of the street sometimes left scraps of food, rice mixed with fish or bits of meat, near the truck. Rusty never acted friendly toward people, but she didn't run away either. She just watched quietly, ears drooping, as if carrying a sorrow no one could grasp. Rusty was devoted. She hunted mice in dark alleys, bringing back tiny morsels for her kittens. She curled around them every night, using her thin frame to shield them from the cold wind. The 5 kittens grew day by day. 2 black, 1 tabby like her, 1 pure white, and 1 gray with striking blue eyes. They were her entire world. Until a cold, rainy night. Subscribe to Kitten Chronicles to catch more true stories. That night, the rain fell harder than usual. Big drops slammed onto the pavement, forming puddles that reflected the streetlights. Rusty curled around her kittens, trying to keep them dry. Thunder rumbled, and they burrowed deeper into her, trembling. But then, another sound cut through the rain. The roar of an engine in the distance. Another truck sped through the street, fast and careless, its tires splashing water in waves. When the engine's noise faded, Rusty sprang up. She cried out, a sharp panic sound. Under the truck, only 3 kittens remained, huddled together, soaked and shivering. The other 2, the white one and the gray one with blue eyes, were gone. No one knew exactly what happened. Maybe they were swept away by the water. Maybe the truck had accidentally run them over. Or perhaps a stray dog had taken advantage of the storm to strike. But from that night, Rusty changed. She no longer lay still beside her kittens. She stood there under the truck, staring out at the road, calling endlessly. Her cries echoed through the night, mournful and desperate, like a plea no one answered. The neighbors heard. The old man across the street stood by his window, hands trembling around a cold coffee mug. The elderly woman whispered to her husband, "It breaks your heart. She's calling for them." But no one dared step out into the rain. They just stood there, helpless, watching Rusty's small figure blur in the downpour. The next morning, the rain stopped, but the air remained frigid. A middle-aged woman living a few blocks away walked her dog, a golden retriever, as she did every day. She wasn't one for small talk. She lived alone, worked at the local library, and spent most of her time reading or tending to her dog. But that day, as she passed the rusty truck, she paused. The dog sniffed, ears perked, then tugged her toward the truck. The woman crouched down and saw Rusty, golden eyes watching her warily beside 3 soaked, shivering kittens. She didn't love cats. She'd never kept one, and her dog wouldn't approve if she did, but something in Rusty's gaze held her there. "Oh, look at the poor little things," she murmured. She knelt, setting her dog to sit nearby. then gently placed a hand on the ground, an invitation. Rusty didn't move, but she didn't growl either. The woman stood, sighed, and decided to do something even she hadn't expected. That afternoon, she returned with an old towel, some cat food from the store, and a small water dish. She placed them near the truck, far enough not to scare Rusty. "Eat up, okay?" she said, knowing Rusty wouldn't understand. She lingered, watching Rusty inch toward the food, sniff it, then return to wrap around her kittens. The woman smiled, a sad but warm smile. From then on, she became part of their lives. Every morning she brought food and water. Every afternoon she checked on them. She didn't try to take them. She knew Rusty didn't trust people, but she wanted them to know they weren't alone. Day by day, something miraculous began. The 3 kittens, the tabby, the first black one, and the second black one, started crawling out from under the truck. They tumbled in the grass, chased each other, and even darted near the woman to sniff her hand. Rusty stayed wary, but she stopped growling when the woman came close. Sometimes, the woman heard a faint purr from Rusty's throat, a sound she hadn't heard before. The old man across the street and the elderly woman from down the road joined in. The old man brought an old wooden box lined with fabric and set it near the truck for a warmer shelter. The elderly woman left warm milk each night. Slowly, the whole neighborhood learned about the family under the truck. They weren't just stray animals. They became part of the community, but the woman still saw sadness in Rusty's eyes. Though the remaining kittens grew playful again, Rusty often stared out at the road, as if waiting. The woman didn't know about the 2 lost kittens, but she felt the emptiness Rusty carried. "You still miss them, don't you?" she whispered once, sitting a few steps from the truck. 2 days later, in the late afternoon, the woman was walking her dog when she heard a faint cry from behind a nearby alley. The dog barked, pulling her toward the sound. She stopped, heart pounding. In the alley's shadows, under a pile of wet cardboard, 2 tiny pairs of eyes glinted at her. It was them, the white one and the gray one with blue eyes. They were thin, fur-matted with mud and water, but alive. The woman couldn't believe her eyes. She knelt, reaching out gently. The 2 kittens trembled, inching closer, mewing weakly. She wrapped them in her jacket, tears streaming down her face. "How did you survive this?" she whispered. She ran back to the truck, setting the 2 kittens down near the undercarriage. Rusty leapt up, sniffing frantically. Then she cried out, not the anguished wail from the rainy night, but a joyful, trembling sound. She licked the lost kittens, pulling them close, while the other 3 crowded in, nuzzling around her. The woman stood there, frozen, watching the reunion. Her dog wagged its tail beside her, as if sensing the miracle. No one knew how the 2 kittens survived. Maybe they'd been swept into the alley, hiding under trash, scraping by through the cold days. But one thing was certain: they never gave up on their mother, and Rusty never stopped waiting. The next day, the woman brought a larger box, lined with warm towels. She placed it under the truck, and for the first time, Rusty stepped out willingly, leading all 5 kittens inside. They curled up together, sleeping soundly in their mother's warmth. The woman sat there a long while, watching them, feeling a joy she'd never known. The neighborhood kept caring for them. The old man across the street built a small roof to shield them from rain. The elderly woman brought more food, and the woman, who once thought she didn't care for cats, became their quiet guardian. The story of the family under the truck spread through the neighborhood and beyond. It reminded people that even a small act of kindness could change a creature's world. For Rusty, it was the world she'd reclaimed. For the woman, it was a reason to believe in miracles. Subscribe to Kitten Chronicles to catch more true stories where love triumphs over fear.